the medical examiner found that Sicknick's injuries were related to his service.
Is it a medical examiner for who?
For whomever did the autopsy.
Okay.
I believe it was the DC.
And as far as you said, you're not concerned about misinformation from the Washington Post? What about...
Not on this topic, no.
So the lead investigator for the January 6th committee, you know that committee where the Republicans were Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. Yeah, it was a complete and total setup. It was a made-for-television production meant to end Donald Trump's career. Boy, that worked out, didn't it? Well, the lead investigator has a book that he's selling, and he was doing one of these DC book signing open forums in Washington. It's at this up Northwest DC Chevy Chase book shop called Politics and Prose. You'll remember, I've talked to you about this before. This is where Jamie Raskin was saying, we've got to suspend the Constitution and say that Donald Trump is not eligible to be president. Yeah, that same bookshop. He was there being interviewed by Jonathan Karl of ABC News. What he wasn't expecting was that in the middle of this liberal bastion, this Democrat fortress, one guy, one independent journalist would come up and confront him with the truth about January 6th. Watch what happens.
Coming in from the back.
How you doing? So I just want to follow up on something you said earlier. You said there's no equivalence between the BLM protests and the January 6th riots. So my question is, like, how can you say, you know, aside from all the property damage and the burned homes, how can you say the violence was worse at the Capitol compared to BLM protests when many people were killed in the BLM/Antifa protests, but the protesters didn't kill anybody on January 6th? And just one short follow-up question, if I may. You mentioned in the book that the issue with misinformation on social media, which everyone would agree is an issue. Are you concerned about misinformation from sources like the local paper of note, the Washington Post, which did give everyone the false impression that the protesters had killed somebody on January 6th. He died the following day of natural causes. The Post did make that correction many months later, but most people didn't get that update. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you're going to hear the answer, but already I love this guy, and I want to give as many props as humanly possible to him. His name is Matt Orfalea. That's spelled Orfalea. And Matt, I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that, but obviously, as you can see from the bug there, orf.report is a place where you can go for all of his content. He has a YouTube channel. Here's the thing about Matt. I have no idea what his politics are. For all I know, he could be a Bernie Sanders supporting left-wing liberal. I don't care. He asked a question based on fact. And by the way, these guys, both of them, this lead investigator lawyer guy who was Liz Cheney's and Nancy Pelosi's hatchet man, and Jonathan Karl, who looks like he's never heard this information before about Officer Sicknick not dying due to anything that happened on January 6th, but he died from a stroke in natural causes. That's what the medical examiner in Washington, D.C. determined. They look like they've never heard this information before. And one other thing about this guy, the lead investigator, that's shocking him right now, he's shocked that anyone in that bookstore actually read his book. See, here's a little dirty secret about Washington, D.C. When you're politically connected like this guy, you get a big advance from the publishing house. They love paying for liberal writers to write liberal things because they know the liberals in Washington will buy the book just so they can have it on their shelf or on their book table, their coffee table when people come over to visit. They say, oh, are you reading that? Oh, yes, it's really important. It's really strong. Nobody actually ever reads these things. This guy read it, and now he's holding him accountable for his lies. So let's see what the answer is to that very important question. Why did you say that there's no comparison with BLM, considering people died at the BLM riots and no one died as a result of January 6th? I mean, of course, except for the protesters who died. All right, let's get to it.
Okay, thank you for the question.
I'm not concerned about misinformation from the Washington Post. I generally trust the Washington Post and other credible sources of information. There were people who died as a direct result of their involvement in protecting the Capitol. So that's not misinformation. And I don't mean to suggest on the BLM protests in the summer of 2020 that they weren't serious, that they weren't worthy of a strong response, that people shouldn't have been held accountable. They absolutely were. My point is that they were just sort of fundamentally different than an attack on the seat of government. They're just a fundamentally different dynamic.
I'm curious, like, how do you think that one is worse, violence by when they did get this? And I am curious, who, like, you say you trust everything in the Washington Post, and then you also say Officer Sicknick was killed associated to something that happened during the riot, but the Post itself followed up much later and said he died of natural causes.
No, Brian, the medical examiner found that Officer Sicknick died as a result of exposure to the chemical agents and the stress of defending the Capitol, exacerbating a pre-existing condition. That's a legal conclusion that I trust, that the Washington Post didn't make up.
That's just not true, as you can see the clips that Matt has put on here. And Mr. Heafy here, the lead investigator, continues to promulgate this lie. And you hear it all the time. John Carl, by the way, he's like, what, the chief Washington correspondent or politics editor for ABC News. He doesn't know the truth here either. He doesn't know the facts. But as you can see, even here from the Washington Post, Francisco Diaz, the medical examiner, said the autopsy found no evidence that the 42-year-old officer suffered an allergic reaction to chemical irritants. No evidence of internal or external injuries. He died of a stroke. It's tragic. It's horrible for him and for his family. He was 42 years old. That's bad. Stop using his death as a political weapon and stop lying about it for your own political purposes. And he can, and again, this is the lead investigator for the January 6th committee in the House of Representatives.
No, I'm saying the Washington Post said otherwise.
No. Okay, I think our time for questions is done. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, I really appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Our time for questions are done now, because you actually asked a tough one. He was the last one. By the way, you noticed at the beginning, John the Colonel said, yeah, you way back in the room. And that ended up being the last question. Most important part of the exchange. We're going to watch it one more time.
You say you trust everything in the Washington Post, and then you also say Officer Sicknick was killed associated to something that happened during the riot. But the Post itself followed up much later and said he died of natural causes.
No, Brian, the medical examiner found that Officer Sicknick died as a result of exposure to the chemical agents and the stress of defending the Capitol, exacerbating a pre-existing condition. That's a legal conclusion that I trust, that the Washington Post didn't make up.
No, I'm saying the Washington Post said otherwise.
No. Okay, I think our time for questions is done.
Yeah, they don't want to hear the follow-up, but let's just be clear here, because it's the most important part. Again, man's name is Tim Heafy. He was the lead investigator hired by Nancy Pelosi, Liz Cheney, to produce the entire January 6th investigation. You tell me this thing doesn't need to be investigated by, well, the Republicans in the House were already investigating through Congressman Loudermilk of Georgia. But you tell me that there doesn't need to be a special investigator into these guys and the lies that they put forth and continue to put forth. This is what he just said. The medical examiner found that Officer Sicknick died as a result of exposure to the chemical agents and the stress of defending the Capitol. The Washington Post itself said that the medical examiner said the autopsy found no evidence the officer suffered an allergic reaction to chemical irritants, which Diaz said would have caused Sicknick's throat to quickly seize. Diaz also said there was no evidence of internal or external injuries. It's awful that this man died. It's terrible. You know what's even worse? Lying about his death and using it for a political weapon against innocent people, which is exactly what we see, not just those innocent people who have been arrested and incarcerated and bankrupted, over 1,000 of them because they were there on January 6th, but also every single Trump supporter, every single Trump voter, every single politician who aligns themselves with Trump is now slandered with this scarlet letter that you're supporting an insurrectionist and somebody died because of January 6th. January 6th was a terrible day. Don't make it worse by lying about it. Later, during the book signing, again, this guy, Matt Orfalea, Orfalea, You're a hero, dude. And again, I don't even know what your politics are. It doesn't matter to me. You care about the truth. And you are courageous enough to go right up to him with your camera during the book signing and continue this very important conversation.
So the Post did say it was natural causes. When did they learn, and how did we learn that it was related?
The medical examiner found that Sicknick's injuries were related to his service.
Is it a medical examiner for who?
For whomever did the autopsy.
Okay.
I believe it was the DC.
And as far as you said, you're not concerned about misinformation from the Washington Post. What about
Not on this topic, no.
Okay, but other topics like the Iraq War and all that, is that
Kind of beyond my scope.
Okay, all right. Thanks. Have a great.
All right. So he continues to repeat the lie over and over and over again. By the way, one other noteworthy item. If you go to this bookstore, Politics and a Prose, again, I've tried to paint the picture as to what this place is like and who goes there. That's why they were shocked to get a challenging question from somebody who actually just knows the facts about these things. Here's some of the items you can buy while you're there. You can get a real life Dr. Fauci action figure, complete with white lab coat, which, by the way, is something I don't think Fauci has worn in about 40 years because, you know, it doesn't match the shoes and the belt. And even better, your Dr. Anthony Fauci socks. I wonder if these are on the clearance rack when you go to Politics and Prose. Also, you can get your Kamala hats done in the color and font of Brat Summer. Oh, remember Brat Summer? That was a more innocent time, wasn't it? And you can get your purple non-binary hat, which is something. You can also get your, what are those, finger puppets? Kamala Harris finger puppets to entertain your little baby. You get your it looks like a tea cozy or oh no, that's an oven mitt. The American dream belongs to all of us, Kamala Harris oven mitt, and your Harris Waltz magnets for your refrigerator, because that'll kill your appetite if you're going to eat something. Again, I hope that these are all on the clearance rack there at Politics and Prose. Oh, a Dr. Fauci tote bag is also something everybody needs to complete the set. Good job, Matt or Falea. Beautiful work and incredibly revealing and important for everybody to see exactly. You know, don't take a back seat to any of these people who claim that they have the moral high ground on the actual events of January 6th, which again, I will admit, it was a horrible day. I was angry. I'm still angry about what happened on January 6th, but it doesn't need to be made worse by people lying and harming innocent people and, frankly, abusing the memory of this Capitol Hill police officer, Officer Sicknick, who died tragically from a stroke days after the events of January 6th. And again, as noted and repeated, based on the DC medical examiner's own report, was not related in any way whatsoever to the events of January 6th, despite what every single member of the propagandist corporate media wants to continue to repeat. And I'm sure they will on Inauguration Day, 1 week from today, as President Trump is sworn in. I assure you, I guarantee you that Mr. Tapper and Mr. Stephanopoulos and Ms. O'Donnell and all of them in between will all say, isn't it ironic that here he is standing on the steps of the very building that was under assault just 4 years ago, where Officer Brian Sicknick died as a result of that. And it's all a lie. It's all a lie, and they should be ashamed of themselves. Increased tariffs on our trade partners, they're coming, man. Tax cuts and regulation changes, well, I hope they're coming. Learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever. That's right. All of the things that the Trump administration is about to implement economically is going to affect your pocketbook, your long-term plans, and gold has got to be a part of that. Birch Gold, the only company I endorse, they're releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. And there's a foreword of that book written by Donald Trump Jr. Get your free copy right now, along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold. All you got to do is text my name, Larry, Larry, easiest name in the world, to 989898. Larry, text that to 989898. The facts don't change regardless of who the president is. Our national debt going through the roof. The interest payments on the national debt going through the roof. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar. And Birch Gold, still the company I recommend to help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. and not one penny out of pocket for you. So text my name, Larry, to 989898. Get your free copy of The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era. There's no obligation, only information. Once again, that's my name. Text Larry, Larry, to 989898. Do it now.